Hey guys, tonight we're taking a slow, snowy stroll into one of the most unexpectedly eerie and delightful corners of Viking culture. Picture this: the wind whispers through a birch forest, your boots crunch against icy moss, and somewhere in the distance, a stick murmurs back. Yes, you heard that right. We're diving into a world where Vikings didn't just raid and sail, they also spoke to ghosts. Not with swords, not with shields, not with grand magical talismans, just humble wooden sticks. And honestly, by the end of this, you might find yourself wanting one. Before we settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time is it by your stars and shadows. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins with a chill not sharp but steady that sinks through your tunic and into your bones. You're standing outside a longhouse in a quiet Viking village where the snow knows your name and the sky never fully wakes up. In your hand is a stick. Not just any stick, it's carved smooth and etched with faintly shimmering runes like frost catching moonlight. An old woman handed it to you this morning with one eyebrow raised and said, "Use it to ask him where he left the goat." Then walked away like that explained everything. Now you're wondering, are you supposed to wave it, plant it, or gently poke the air like you're testing ghost soup for temperature? Across the path, a rooster glares at you. Not because you're doing anything wrong. Roosters just judge. You sigh and poke the stick into the snow. The wind stirs. You hear something faint, a whisper, a name. Or maybe it's just your stomach reminding you that breakfast here consists of fermented fish and something that's either cheese or a mistake. Around you, life moves on. Villagers sharpen blades. Others carve more of these mysterious sticks. A boy pulls a sled filled with bones, pig bones decorative. This isn't the bloodthirsty horned helmet Viking world you were taught. It's quiet, domestic, supernatural in subtle everyday ways, like chatting with a dead uncle about where he buried the good hammer. Let's talk facts for a moment. Vikings genuinely believed in communication between the living and the dead. And it wasn't rare, it was almost casual. They'd build wooden platforms to lift messages to the sky, or whisper into carved sticks and leave them at crossroads. The logic was simple: spirits listen, especially when they're bored. And let's face it, Valhalla doesn't have great Wi-Fi. Some families even kept heirloom sticks used only for asking about inheritance. Imagine a will-reading scene, but with a dramatic stick wave and maybe a chicken sacrifice for flair. Now the scholars argue. Were these communication sticks part of cider, an ancient Norse spiritual practice tied to women and shape-shifting? Or were they just old habits grown into rituals over time? But you sip warm, honeyed milk and decide it doesn't matter. You're here for the vibes, not the footnotes. You walk toward the birch grove, the place locals say the veil between worlds is thinnest. Every village has one, where echoes return wrong and crows seem far too interested. There's a weathered stump here. Atop it lies a flat stone etched in Old Norse, "Leave the goat alone." Apparently goats cause drama even in the afterlife. You place your stick gently across the stone. Nothing happens. Then again, the wind pauses. The trees lean in, and just for a moment you don't feel alone. It might be your imagination, or Ragnar the Elder annoyed that you borrowed his stick without asking. Either way, this is only the beginning. The morning fog curls around your boots like a clingy cat with unfinished gossip. You're still holding the same rune-carved stick, and while it hasn't burst into flames or summoned the ghost of Bjorn with the extra toes, yet it does feel heavier somehow. Not in weight emotionally, as if it's silently judging your life choices. You decide it's time for answers. The kind only someone who's been dead for 300 years might provide. So you head toward the edge of the village to the healer's cottage. Her name is Edda, known for speaking with the spirits, taming geese with a stare, and once cursing a man into milking his goat backwards for an entire month. Her house smells like herbs and boiled moss. You duck under a doorway made entirely of fish bones, decorative, functional. You don't ask. Edda looks up from a bowl of something green and gloopy. "You've got the stick," she says, squinting at you like you're a suspiciously shaped mushroom. "I do," you reply. "I think it's whispering." She nods solemnly. Then it's time. Time for what you're not quite sure. But she offers you a seat, a warm cup of nettle tea, and slaps your hand when you try to scratch your nose with the stick. "You'll confuse it," she warns. "Sticks don't like indecision. You nod like that was obvious to you all along. Historical fact-time Viking culture included powerful seeresses called verlor, who practiced satyr magic. They used staffs or distaffs not just to spin wool, but to speak with spirits and weave fate. So yes, in Viking lore, your grandma's knitting needle might double as a supernatural hotline. Here's a curious detail. Some archaeologists believe the staff burials of these women suggest deep respect. Even Viking chieftains reportedly sought their guidance and feared their ghosts. One burial site even contained a wand carved with transformation scenes, possibly shapeshifting, or maybe just a really dramatic illustrated diary. Ask it something simple, Edda says, handing you a small piece of dried fish, a snack, an offering you're unsure. You raise the stick. Where did I leave the goat last winter? Silence, then the wind shifts. One of Edda's candles flares sideways. Outside, a goose honks 3 times. You glance at Edda. That means probably the shed, she says. Oh, you lower the stick, a little disappointed. That's it. Spirits have limited energy, she shrugs, and limited patience for goat-based inquiries. Unexpected twist. Some Norse rituals involve singing to spirits, not chanting actual singing. Lullabies, riddles, even folk tunes. The idea ancestors like to be serenaded. Just imagine you're a ghost haunting your descendants, and they show up with a catchy song and a roasted turnip. You'd listen. Try again, Edda urges, but this time hum something. You hum a tune from childhood. Could be a lullaby. Could be a tavern song about cabbage. Either way, the stick warms in your grip. You whisper, why did my great-great-uncle haunt the pantry for 3 weeks last spring? The stick vibrates. Mice, Edda says without hesitation. He hated mice. You glance down at the runes. They haven't changed, but something in your bones tells you the answer is real. Strange, quiet, and true. Academic footnote alert: scholars debate whether Viking magic was actual belief as social performance or just good old grief processing. Did people really think the stick responded? Or was it a comforting ritual one that gave voice to questions nobody else could answer? You sip your nettle tea watching the dust dance in candlelight and decide it doesn't matter. Sometimes belief is its own kind of magic. Suddenly Edda stands. Come, she says. We're going to the cairn. You blink. This sounds either promising or like the start of a horror story. Cairns are stone markers, burial mounds, sacred sites, or possibly just places someone once tripped and decided deserved commemoration. The walk is short. Snow crunches beneath your boots. The trees don't whisper, they watch. You arrive at the cairn, 5 stones stacked awkwardly, yet somehow full of presence. You kneel, place the stick at its base. The air stills. Your breath clouds. Then you hear it, not words, not even sound. Just a knowing, like a memory brushing past your cheek. You step back, leave the fish, Edda says, so you do. Because honestly, when an ancient Viking ghost asks for a snack, you don't argue. You wake up in a haze of smoke salt and something that smells suspiciously like burnt porridge. Again. Just another morning in the land of wind and whispering rocks. And today your mission is simple. Follow the ghost's directions. Last night, quite firmly, a stick and a stone cairn, translated by Edda, and a mildly judgmental goose told you to find the path of the ancestors. No one knows where that is, of course, but the fish bones might. You head down to the beach. The tide's out, leaving behind glistening seaweed-splintered shells and 3 angry crabs, locked in what appears to be a very heated conference. The air tastes like cold iron and untold stories. Your boots crunch across the gravel. You reach into the drift, searching, sifting, until your fingers close around it, a single long fish bone. Carved. Yes, carved. Historical fact alert: Viking societies use fish bones not only for needles and tools, but occasionally as message markers. Some fragments discovered along the Norwegian coast bear what look like proto-runes, symbolic lines or spirals possibly representing directions, rituals, or village gossip. Were they maps, warnings, grocery lists? No one agrees. Today your bone carries 3 straight lines and a tiny spiral. You squint. Is it a ghost sign or just a Viking doodle of a snail? That's a trail marker, says Edda, startling you as she appears out of nowhere, casually holding a basket of sea urchins like she was born with it. Where has it led, you ask? To the whispering stones, she replies. North into the low hills. Take food and don't whistle. Ghosts think it's rude. Another curious fact: Vikings believe some stones remembered voices. These whispering stones, often tall, mossy, and oddly shaped, were where people spoke to the dead, the gods, or just themselves after a particularly bad farming day. The acoustics carried your words in unsettling ways, like the rocks were thinking about what you said. So you set off. In your pack, dried bread, a small hunk of cheese, one clean sock, just one, the carved fish bone. Etta hands you a second stick in case the first one's feeling moody. The road north is rough. Thin trails wind between frozen puddles. Tufts of brittle grass crunch underfoot. A raven flies overhead and mutters something you're 90% sure was sarcastic. Midway through your hike, you find the first stone. It's taller than you, covered in moss. You press your ear against it and hear humming. Not a song, more like the stone is struggling to remember a lullaby from 400 years ago. So naturally you hum back. Suddenly the wind stirs. Your carved fish bone glows faintly. Or maybe it's just the sun, but you're not about to ruin the moment by being rational. The second stone appears after a short climb, then a third. Together they form a rough triangle. You're supposed to stand in the center. So you do. And there it is again, that knowing. A tug behind your ears. A memory that doesn't belong to you. Your arms tingle, your breath catches. You are being watched. But gently. Like by a librarian who's quietly impressed you made it this far without tripping. Academic question of the day. Were these rituals solitary or communal? Some scholars believe whispering stones mark sacred groves where seasonal rites were held. Others argue they were intimate spaces of grief and guidance. But nearly all agree these stones mattered, more than just fancy rocks to sit on while fixing your sandal strap. You speak softly, what now? The wind shifts. A breeze carries the scent of pine. A single raven feather lands beside your boot. A sigh in Etta's voice echoes faintly through the hills. That means yes. Yes to what you don't know. But the path curves onward. And the sticks, the bones, and the whispers all agree you're doing just fine. You keep walking. The hills dip and rise like the back of some enormous sleeping beast. The wind hisses between rocks, slipping through your cloak and whispering secrets ones you're pretty sure are either ancient curses or very detailed weather forecasts. Eventually the trail forks. To the left, mist and shadows. To the right, mist and fewer shadows. You choose right because you're brave but not stupid. Soon a cabin emerges from the fog. It's small, squat, and entirely covered in charms, bundles of herbs, polished bones, and tiny wood carvings that dangle from the eaves like wind chimes, made by someone both artistic and very, very lonely. You knock, no answer, so naturally you go in. The inside smells of pine smoke, dried lavender, and something sweet and root-like licorice, or maybe grave dirt with ambition. A table sits in the center set for four. One chair creaks, like it was recently occupied by something invisible but polite. Take the middle seat, says a voice. You turn. No one's there. Great. You sit. Historical fact time. Viking sorcery wasn't limited to battlefields or wild rituals. There were quiet traditions, forms of satyr, often performed by women or effeminate men who were both respected and feared. These rituals weren't about flailing possessions or dramatic thunder. More like inviting a ghost to tea with excellent manners and awkward pauses before you four wooden bowls. Hey, Rihanna, one holds hot broth, one holds cold porridge, one cloudy water, and one black stones. You do not eat them, probably. Instead, you mimic what Etta would do. You touch each bowl, then close your eyes. And when you open them, the cabin is full. 3 figures now sit with you. Their faces are vague, but you know them in that bone-deep, dreamlike way. Arinaj, one has a thick braided beard. One wears her hair tied with seashells. The third hums a melody that tugs at the edge of your childhood dreams, except you were born in a century that hasn't happened yet. The bearded one speaks first. You brought the bone. You nod and offer the carved fish bone. He nods in return. Then the map is yours to read. The woman with shells leans forward. But remember, she warns, not all paths are forward. Some twist, some loop, some vanish under snow. You try to ask what that means, but your voice won't work. Instead, your spoon lifts on its own and dips into the broth. The taste is ancient, smoky, salty, strange. Like you just licked the edge of a saga. Strange but scholarly, some academics believe cedar rituals involved ritual tableau. arrangements of bowls, staffs, and bones designed to represent symbolic meaning. One theory, these acted like mnemonic maps guiding the practitioner into altered states. Another theory, it was just very elaborate tea time with dramatic flair and minimal biscuits. Suddenly the humming stops. The third figure looks up. You must seek the runestone in the split tree. You blink. Which tree? But they're gone. The cabin is empty again. The bowls are cold. Your spoon is still in your hand. And the door creaks open, as if someone or something just left. You stand, shaken but steady. You don't know where the split tree is, but that's okay. You're learning the Viking way. Don't ask where, just walk. If a ghost doesn't stop you, you're probably on the right path. The trail begins like most trails do, dirt roots, and the occasional squirrel that stares at you like it's read your search history. But as you move deeper into the woods, the path changes. The trees here don't just grow, they loom. Their bark is dark and textured like wrinkled skin, twisted as if halfway through shrugging off their own trunks. Some have knots shaped like eyes. Others just are eyes, probably. You glance at one tree, it blinks. You keep walking. Welcome to the ghostwood, as the locals call it. Not because of actual ghosts, though, let's be honest, it's starting to feel like it, but because the wind whistles through these trees in a way that mimics voices. Or maybe the voices mimic the wind. Tomato, tomato, haunted forest. Suddenly a thin branch dips across your path as if pointing somewhere off trail. And because you've clearly learned nothing from every horror story ever told you, follow it. That's when you find it. A tree split clean down the middle. It stands tall but cracked, as though lightning kissed it once and never returned its letters. The center is hollow, and within the hollow is something utterly out of place, a stick. Not just any stick. It's carved with tiny swirling runes. Not Norse runes, though. These are older, stranger. They twist when you look too long. You reach in and pick it up. It hums. History, fact break, Norse runes like the Elder Futhark were used for writing divination and magic. But some Viking-era texts reference sticks that speak wooden runes used in casting lots or binding spells. Some were tucked into homes to ward off spirits. Others were dropped into graves to keep the dead from being bored. Yes, really, the stick in your hand. It's warm, it pulses, and then it speaks. You are not from this time, it says, not in your ears, but directly in your skull. But you walk paths old enough to welcome you. Charming. You do what any reasonable person would do. You panic internally and then ask the stick a question out loud like a deeply confused wizard's intern. What do I do now? A soft chuckle. You find the 3 doors. You knock on the one that doesn't echo, and then you remember your name, which is not helpful. You have like one name. It's a good name. It hasn't gone anywhere. Hopefully, the wind picks up, carrying the sound of something distant. Chimes number bones, clacking gently, politely, as if whatever is moving toward you has excellent manners and very few muscles. Time for another weird but true tidbit. Archaeologists have found apotropaic sticks carve charms, buried at doorways, windows, and even stables. Their purpose to confuse spirits. That's right. The ancient Norse believed you could literally bamboozle a ghost by placing an enchanted stick with a looping rune that said something like, go in circles until sunrise. Basically, magical do not disturb signs. You tuck the humming stick into your belt and move on. As you walk, the forest begins to shift again. Trees thin, fog lifts, and you emerge into a clearing unlike anything you've seen so far. 3 stone doorways stand in a triangle, each carved from different material: black, basalt, bone-white granite, and one shimmering like soap film caught in sunlight. That one seems least physically stable and therefore the most emotionally unstable. You approach anyway. Each doorway has a word written in runes. You can read only one. It says, remember, you knock, no echo. And then the world peels open, not violently, just like someone opening a curtain too slowly. You step through. You step through the gate like entering a dream, repeating itself from another lifetime. But unlike your usual dreams filled with falling teeth or endless math exams, this one holds light. The place you arrive in is not a forest, not a village, but a valley suspended between 2 layers of clouds. The grass glows. The ground is soft like warm bread beneath your feet. And in the distance, a group of spirits, shifting like white ink stains, Stand in quiet debate around a single stick planted upright in stone. You approach walking lightly as though stepping across someone's memory. One of the spirits turns toward you. It has no eyes, but you feel its gaze. You don't know why, but you bow. It nods back, politely, a little strange. A voice echoes inside your head. You came for the stick, but what you seek is not in the stick. It's in what you don't want to remember. Great, very specific, very helpful. You approach the stick. It's not like the rune-carved ones from before. No glow, no hum, no ancient whisper trying to sell you emotional clarity. It just stands there, calm, challenging. You reach out and touch it. It's cold. You hear a soft click, and suddenly every spirit dissolves into white smoke. The valley fades. A flickering black and white memory plays across your vision. A long-haired woman holding a rune stick whispering to the howling north wind. History fact interlude. In Northern Europe, especially Iceland and Sweden, Völar female shamans use ceremonial staffs to summon spirits, cast prophecies, and open ghost paths. Some were buried with their staffs along with food mirrors and horse bones. Why horses? No one's sure. Most bizarre theory. The staffs helped them call spirits to deliver news from the other side. Yes, ghost messengers. Back in the vision, you feel as if the woman sees you through time, as if you were her student, in a dream never told. And then her voice becomes clearer. 3 words, 3 sticks, 3 regions. Remember, the present is where the dead rise. You open your eyes, still standing beside the staff. Everything is quiet. But now something's in your hand. An old cloth, soft and worn, embroidered with runes. A fragment of prophecy. You flip it over. It reads, "The second gate waits in the bones of the sunken crown." Perfectly clear. Super convenient. Do you have a map? No. Do you have Google Maps? Also no. Do you have a spirit of adventure and an increasingly fragile self-esteem? Absolutely. You decide to move on. Patient, besessen. You move toward the wind, feeling the cold seeping into your toes through the linen that, let's be honest, wasn't designed for this kind of humid tropical climate. The landscape shifts from a bright valley to a dim ash-haze plain. The ground beneath your feet softens and sinks like you're walking on the foam of memory. In the distance, you see a cone of rocks. Not a mountain, not a tomb, but a buried Viking ship, its prow jutting from the earth like the spine of a dragon long dead. Wind howls through gaps in the hull as if someone's playing a flute beneath the ground. You step closer, touching the dark carved planks. Some runes glow faintly. You recognize algae as a symbol of protection. Next to it, a piece of hemp twisted tightly around a small brass crown broken in 2. You think, the crown sank. Immediately, the wind shifts direction. Coincidence? Probably not. You tug gently on the rope. The crown slips away, revealing a narrow crevice containing a small, intricately carved wooden box. It's only the size of your hand, but much heavier than it looks. You open it. Inside is a whalebone stick. Its head is broken, but it's covered in runes. And tucked inside the lid is an inscription, not in runes, but in Old Norse. Scrawled, "Not all whispers are true, but answer if it calls your name." You close the box, the wind dies. And then a voice calls out from behind the wreck. "You are late." You spin, no one there. You check your pocket. The embroidered cloth from earlier is glowing now. It points west. Not west, as in compass coordinates, but the kind of west where a faint orange-red glow bleeds across the horizon, calling you like a campfire on the longest winter night. You follow. The rocks thin out. The sand becomes finer. The only sound now is your footsteps and the faint clatter of bones beneath them, like ancient bells ringing out your arrival. 7th historical fact. Archaeologists have discovered runic whalebone sticks buried next to Viking leaders, often placed near the skull. One theory: Vikings believed spirits of loved ones could call from the sea, and whalebone, being of the sea, acted as a transmitter. So these weren't just carved sticks, they were spirit phones. You start to hear waves, salt stings your nose, but there's no ocean. Instead, a narrow stone bridge leading to a low mound. Atop the mound stands a black stone pillar, carved with the figure of a man robed, holding a staff, wearing a broken crown. The face is faceless. You touch the pedestal, a voice in your head. Only when you see your own face in silence will the staff answer. Wow, so now, meditation. You close your eyes. Focus on the wind, on your breath. On the feeling of the whalebone stick growing heavier in your hand, a heartbeat, then two, then a voice as clear as a voicemail left by a ghost with good reception. The question is, are you afraid of the spirit calling you, or of what you'll answer? Today's weird detail. A 13th century Icelandic tale describes a shaman bearing a rune stick inside a cow's head, then sitting beside it silently for 3 days. He claimed the cow's spirit warned him, avoid onions during the darkest month. No one knows what it means, a prophecy, or just really specific dietary advice. You open your eyes, the stone pillar is still there. But now it has a face. Your face, older, worn, smiling. Creeped out yet. No, just give it a minute. Academic side note. Were whalebone rune sticks truly spirit-listening tools, or just symbols of Viking oceanic identity? Some scholars say magical instruments, others spiritual guides, and some grumpy historians claim they were just misunderstood tent poles. Not funny, but okay. You step back from the pillar. In your pocket, the cloth is no longer just glowing. It now shows a map, a circle, 3 diagonal lines, and the words. The third stick is the last, but the fourth voice is yours. Exciting, confusing, like an escape room built by Norse spirits. You chuckle, because if you don't laugh, you'll scream. And in this story, you won't be the first to scream. The air is thick. You're in a place where light seems to choose not to visit. There's no sun, no moon, no stars. Only a faint glow like a Viking nightlight, a strange luminescence that could be spirit energy, or a structural flaw in the space. You still hold the wooden box in your hand. The whalebone stick inside begins to grow warm. Not enough to burn you, but enough to make your hands sweat. Not from fear. Well, maybe a little from fear. You move on. The sand beneath your feet has given way to a paved path. The stones are smooth, too smooth, covered with moss, stalk, and fish bones. No one knows why there are fish bones in the middle of this cold, dry land. Sacred fish, maybe. Or a Viking too lazy to cook, leaving leftovers behind for centuries. The call returns clearer this time. Ek kaller, tu svarer. I call, you answer. You mumble, what am I calling the operator? No one laughs, except you. That's good. You step past the stone pillar, the one carved with your face, and find yourself inside a domed structure. It feels like a stone meditation chamber with a large wooden block in the center, a table, or an altar. Depends on how you're feeling about your life choices. On it rests a third staff, not whalebone this time. A stripped tree branch gently curved, tipped with silver. The runes are burned into the silver, not etched, burned like someone scorched secrets into it. You touch the staff. Your hand goes numb. Then you hear your own voice whispering in your ear, be careful what you think. Not because someone's listening, but because someone's waiting to answer. You glance around. No one there. Only your shadow cast long against the cliff wall. But it blinks. You step back. The wooden box slips from your hand. The whalebone staff rolls out and lightly taps the silver one. Boom. Not an explosion. A vibration. The air contracts and expands like a breath taken by the world itself. The pedestal vanishes. You're standing in the middle of a snowy plain, and all sound disappears. No wind. No heartbeat, no footsteps, only one voice remains. Did you come to speak or to listen? You whisper, listen. Space folds a little like the universe just nodded. Historical fact. In Viking Age, Iceland, many believed echoes in the wind or in rock chambers were the voices of ancestral spirits. Travelers would leave rune sticks under stones or in caves, hoping their loved ones in the spirit world would find them and offer guidance, often in dreams. You feel yourself rise, then fall. You land hard on a stone floor. Above you, a circle of light forms, 3 staffs spinning slowly. Whalebone, charcoal wood, silver-tipped ash. You stand in the center. Your voice echoes through the space. The listener has come. The whisperer has returned. You pause. When did I whisper? You don't remember. You're not even sure who you are anymore. Odd historical detail of the day. One ancient Norse text describes a pair of rune-carved twin sticks, one buried in a grave, the other kept at home. The belief, tap the home stick on a new moon, and if the soul hadn't yet passed on, the one in the grave would vibrate. A kind of spirit pager, high latency ghost communication. Then you see him, the last gatekeeper, a tall figure cloaked in wolf fur, holding a staff like yours. He hands you a piece of cloth. It reads, "The fourth voice is your own, but only if you know the question. You mumble what question, he smiles and disappears. You look down. The three staffs now spin slowly around you like the hands of a clock searching for truth. You think, who am I in the whispers of my ancestors? The staffs stop. The silver one glows. Light flares in your vision. You see nothing, but know everything. It's like someone just uploaded the history of humanity into your brain in Morse code while you were dreaming. You open your eyes. You're lying at the bottom of the shipwreck. The box is beside you. The staff is beside you. Was it all just a moment, maybe? You smile and whisper, no one uses a stick to call a ghost. The light in the box glows once more. You fall silent and listen. Your hand is still on the wooden box, as if it were all a dream, but warm and strange enough that you're sure you've learned something. Maybe history, maybe how to stand up without hurting your back while being watched by a Viking spirit. You open your eyes, it's dark. You're not inside the ship anymore. You're standing at the edge of a forest where moonlight filters gently through the trees. The light is soft. The smell of moss and fresh earth tickles your nose. A breeze blows, and an owl hoots. Not loud, not fierce. An owl that seems to be listening. You look down. A gray owl is perched on a stick leaning against a large oak. The stick looks unremarkable except for the red hemp string tied around one end. The owl nods at you. You nod back. You've reached a rare agreement between man and bird. Neither of you will jump first. You take the stick. The hemp smells old. Maybe medicinal herbs. Maybe the sweat of a 9th century peasant who swore red string kept away spirits. As you hold the stick, you hear a new whisper. Not from the ground, from the trees. A woman's voice, soft as breath. We wrote, but no one read. We carved, but who saw you look up? No one. Just tiny strips of cloth hanging from the branches like blessings the wind forgot to carry away. You reach out and touch one. It's marked with a small axe, a flower, and an eye. The stick vibrates. The wind shifts. You're being pulled not away, inward. You're no longer in the forest. You're sitting at a stone table holding a half-carved stick. In front of you is a Viking woman, mid-30s, dressed in furs resin on her hands. Her eyes look straight through you. They think sticks are just for hitting and pointing, she says, but I write memories into them. Each stroke is something I don't want to forget. She hands you a second stick. This one is simpler. The lines are shallow, almost childlike, but they tremble. They repeat like someone's name being whispered again and again. I made it for my daughter, she says. If I die when the ice melts, this stick will go with me. The other will stay in the house. If it touches fire on a winter night, I'll return. In a dream, you swallow. Can I really return? She shrugs. I don't know. But if I don't, I won't be able to sleep. You wake. The stick is still in your hand. The owl is still there. It cocks its head like it just finished teaching you basic rune telepathy. You remember what the woman said. And you look around the forest. At the base of every tree, you now see carved sticks, some tied with red string, others with bone hooks or braids. No names, just symbols. For those who understand, for dreams that haven't yet been dreamed. Historical fact. Some Viking women, especially vulva seers or shamans, were buried with ritual sticks tied in patterned string. These sticks bore runic inscriptions of unknown purpose. Some believe they were spirit codes, messages meant to be read in dreams. Others suggest they were diaries or portable libraries made of twigs. A curious find, one stick was discovered tied with human hair, originally believed to be ritual. But DNA analysis showed the hair belonged to someone who lived more than 600 kilometers away. Was it a farewell? A love letter with a lock of hair? Today's scholarly question, were the vulva staffs genuine magical tools or just mythologized walking sticks? Some scholars argue they were luxurious status symbols. Others point to elaborate burial ceremonies and coded carvings and ask if it was just for walking. Why the code? You walk deeper into the woods. The owl soars silently above. On the tallest tree, you find a new cloth, this time uncarved. Just one line of runes. You have listened, you have carved. What is it that you wish to keep? You look down at the staff in your hand and begin carving, one stroke, the rest for the next night. A rustling sound like leaves blowing in the wind. except you're in the middle of an icy plain. No leaves, no forest, just wind and slabs of stone. Before you rise tall vertical pillars carved with dozens of runes. They look like unclaimed letters. Like ancient Facebook wall posts, etched in knives and silence. You're standing in a place older than memory. A Viking ticket, a sacred space where only those who listen can hear the answer. And you, unfortunately, or fortunately, are one of them. You kneel before a slab, still holding your staff. A cold current creeps up from the ground like you're lifting the lid on a well of voices. Each rune begins to glow softly, shy like fireflies, uncertain of being seen. Then a voice speaks. Young, irritated, maybe a Viking teenager, ugh. Finally, someone reads this. My parents made me carve this before I died. Said it was so people would remember me. But honestly, I just want folks to know I won the village's biggest ram's horn drinking contest. You laugh softly, a fair reaction to being mildly scolded by the ghost of a 1,000-year-old teen. You tap your stick against the stone. Thanks. I can rest now. And just like that, the rune fades like you've turned off a nightlight for a Viking child. You continue on. Footsteps crunch in soft snow. A new pillar appears twice your height, carved with the image of a woman holding a child. An axe leans beside her. A gust of wind rises and a female voice echoes through the cold. I was buried with my child. We starved together. But I left a message. Don't let women be remembered only when they die with their children. You're silent. So is the wind. Then a gentle chuckle. Don't worry, I'm fine. Just wanted to say something you nod. Fun historical fact. Many Viking stone pillars weren't burial markers. They were messages. Some bore names. Others were whole stories told through ships, axes, and stars. Weird detail. The Karlovy runestone holds a skaldic poem so complex, so metaphor-heavy, that scholars still debate whether it's a eulogy or an insult. Which proves even in the Viking world, someone was too literary. You sit at the final stone in the field. Your staff glows faintly. It trembles like it's remembering something older than language. Then a voice ancient, weathered by 1,000 winters. You heard, you saw, but did you write? You look at the stick. Then down at the snow. With one hand you carve, a simple rune. It doesn't mean much, just a name. Maybe yours, maybe a forgotten friend's. Maybe the Viking who whispered to you. Who knows, when the rune is complete, the ground begins to warm. Not hot, just enough to melt the snow like early spring. A stone door appears beneath your feet. A cellar. You step inside. Today's scholarly question. Were rune columns just ceremonial memorials, or early communication tech? Some scholars suggest they were placed at crossroads like stone social media to share stories, announce events, mark emotional territory, a Viking status update etched in granite. You descend. The tunnel is cold but not empty. The walls are carved not with runes this time, with symbols, spirals, fish bones, dots, lines. You reach out and touch one. A giggle echoes through the tunnel, not creepy, more like someone telling an inside joke that you don't quite get. Still you laugh because it feels right, and then you keep walking. The air in the tunnel is so cold you can feel your breath turning to mist inside your chest. Strange symbols now line the cliff walls, and every time you reach out to touch one, a ripple of light rolls through your brain. Not painful, just itchy, like someone is watching, or maybe you're watching yourself too hard. You turn into a small alcove. On a stone table sits a thin birch box, its lid slightly ajar. Inside, long coiled strands of hair, silky smooth, strangely fragrant like rain-soaked cypress mixed with the smoke of an old campfire. You lift a strand. It's cold, but it quivers, as if it's breathing. Fun historical fact. Viking women often braided their hair into intricate coils and gifted them to loved ones before voyages or battles. These coils weren't just symbolic, they were believed to be talismans, souls woven into thread. If a hair ring lost a strand or broke unexpectedly, it meant something had gone wrong. You look at the hair ring in your hand. One end is tied with dry hemp, the other unfinished. You tie it loosely and wear it around your neck. As if someone had snapped their fingers, a whisper reaches you. Not from your mind, not this time. If you come back, If you don't let this bring your soul back to the hearth, you shiver, but feel strangely warm, as if someone misses you, even though you've never met. You keep walking. The cliff narrows, then opens into a small circular chamber. A vaulted ceiling above carved with abstract symbols. In the center, a wooden pillar. On it rests a stone tablet thick with runes, and beside it, a dull, faded hair tie. One section is marked by a deep gash. Not from a knife, from a fingernail. You lean in to read the rune. They didn't come back. 3 of them. But their hair is still here, so their souls haven't gone. Weird detail. There are records of Viking rituals to call spirits back from the sea. Dakawa. Wrap a loved one's hair around a young tree branch and hang it in the center of the village. Beneath it, a seance table used to listen. Children weren't allowed near. They could hear too clearly. Do children have better ghost Wi-Fi? Possibly. You decide to try. You take your own hair or what little you have and wrap it around the branch of your staff. Then place it upright in the center of the room. You wait. A deep male voice echoes, "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of being forgotten." You say nothing. The staff trembles. Again. "If anyone remembers my name, call me." Even if it's misspelled, you smile. Murmur the first name that comes to mind. Einar. A soft laugh. A breeze swirls, then fades into the stone. Academic sidebar. Did Vikings believe in literal disembodied souls? Or was it all a metaphor? Some scholars suggest these rituals were tools to retain collective memory, not true spirit contact. But if that's the case, why are such rites still off limits to children and half-asleep people? One theory. Liquid consciousness is more open to the unseen. Another theory, the near-sleep state, like the one you're in right now, is a doorway. You step out of the tunnel. The moonlight is dim like diluted ink. In the distance, a Viking camp sleeps soundly. Smoke curls above tents. You catch a trace of dried fish soup from earlier. You tap your staff. The hair ring now wraps around its top, a silent crown, and somehow you know tomorrow will be long. But tonight at least someone will not be forgotten. You wake to the soft sound of water, not waves, not a stream. More like ice cracking loud but soft. Like a glass bell splitting down the middle. You're still in the woods, but now everything is covered in a thin layer of ice like white ceramic. The trees sparkle in the dawn light, frosted and cold. So cold you almost slip just by looking at a leaf too long. And you remember you slept beside your hair stick and your spirit ring. Maybe it was a dream, but the ring is still there. Still warm, still breathing softly. As if the dream hasn't quite let you go, you sit up. Before you sits a wooden bowl. Inside shaved ice, crushed moss, and a single drop of something jade-colored. No one around. No footprints, no smoke from any stove. You sip. It's cold like swallowing a tiny star. And for a moment, images flash behind your eyes. A Viking woman holding a rusty sickle in a sunburned field. A child scratching the soul's back with a feather-tipped stick. An old man whispering secrets into an ice cube. Historical fact, in parts of Northern Europe, dreams were once blamed for crop failure. If a farmer dreamed of rotten fish or drowning in a horse trough, the village performed a dream-washing ritual the next morning. They'd break ice-scoop cold water and pour it along the fields. Some placed small stone statues called drumskull or dream skulls to trap the nightmare before it could spread. You begin to understand these dreams, they may not be yours. You walk on into a forest frozen and silent, a bell-less temple of trees. Strips of cloth hang from the branches. Dream blockers. The Vikings believed dreams could slip out through your hair. So when sleeping outdoors, they tied cloth around their foreheads or onto nearby branches. You touch your own head, nothing. But then you realize someone has braided your hair while you slept. You stop beneath a flat rock. Etched faintly in the ice, unwashed dreams find their way back. You laugh softly. A lazy dream returning like a confused boomerang. Hey, remember me? Weird detail. Some Eastern Viking tribes wrapped ice in linen and placed it on their stomachs while sleeping. The belief, cool the dream before it overheats. Dream of fire bad, dream of snow good, dream of fire in snow. Dangerous, why no one's sure. But a folk song warns. If the snow boils, the fields will explode. You decide, probably wisely, not to cook snow. Scholarly debate. Did Vikings believe dreams held real power? Or were dream rituals a way to bond during long, dark winters? Some scholars say dream washing wasn't about spirits. It was about community sharing, singing, and pouring cold water on turnips together. You look around. No turnips, just ice. You take out a knife and carve into a tree. Don't trust a dream that doesn't know your name. You grin. It's cold to the teeth, but feels like good advice deeper into the woods. You spot a small group of men in animal skins whispering around a cold fire pit. Each holds a wooden stick carved with spirals. One turns and hands you a stick. Write your dream here. Let the fire read it. You carve, I dreamed I drank ice in the woods. My hair was braided by someone who has yet to appear. He nods, then tosses the stick into the cold ashes. Nothing happens. You're about to ask. When a boy beside you whispers, fire reads slowly, but remembers well. You nod. You sit beside him. Your breath fogs, and for the first time in many nights you dream clearly. No fear. No noise, just you, a wooden chair, and a bowl of cold ice cream in the middle of a northern European summer. You wake up not to the sound, but to the feeling of drifting. Not the romantic kind drifting into a dream. Real drifting, as if the ground beneath you has retreated, replaced by melting ice water, and a worn wooden boat is taking you somewhere. You jump up, and sure enough, you're lying on a small Viking-style boat, your hands loosely tied to a hemp mast. No oars, no helmsman. Just you, a few pieces of sheep's wool, a boat, and the soft whisper of a mosquito talking at night. You see no one, but you're definitely not alone. The boat drifts slowly across a lake as still as a face holding a secret. The water's misty. The sunlight doesn't dare penetrate. On the deck, there are small pieces of wood engraved with symbols. You pick one up. You sigh. You don't know if you've just read a spiritual message or a recipe for fish soup. You try to arrange the pieces of wood in a spiral, and then the voice begins. Historical fact. Some sunken Viking ships were intentionally left in lakes or coves not salvaged. It's believed that ships containing human bones, unfulfilled vows, or sacred objects could become speakers for ghosts. On cold, foggy nights, residents swear they can hear the strokes of oars, growls, and even lullabies coming from the cracked hulls. You glance over the edge of the ship. The planks are indeed vibrating like strings. The voice continues, but it doesn't reach your ears. It comes from your spine. Each word seems to be breathed into your backbone cold and clear, like slipping your hand into a bucket of ice water. You bear a new name that has not yet breathed its meaning. Do you seek the living or the lost? Your staff speaks, but who listens? You sit up straight, because that stick now right on the bow of the boat. And where did you bring it? You reach for it. Put your hand on it. A series of scratching sounds like fingernails on dry wood. You realize it's the runic code being tapped by the stick into the boat. You translate and hope you don't call the wrong spirit. This ship once carried warriors. Now carries scribes. Every journey is a memory. Don't step back. You have no intention of stepping back, mainly because there are no oars. Weird detail. Some ancient Norse people believed that if you placed an object once owned by the dead on a shipwreck, the spirit would run a new operating system and answer questions through the wood. No kidding. They placed sausages, hairbrushes, even half-eaten bread, and waited. If the object moved, changed color, or sank, they had a response. You look at the stick. It has just turned 90 degrees without anyone touching it. You ask quietly, am I carrying someone else's dream? The stick does not answer, but the wind changes direction. The ship drifts into a small bay where a black sand beach sparkles with volcanic rock. There are footprints on the beach, big, deep, and repeated like someone who doesn't want to be forgotten. You step down, sink slightly. Each step feels like someone is watching. A gust of wind blows. Along with it is a sigh. You turn around. On the ship, a faint figure is sitting in your place. Taking the stick, it nods. Go on, this ship is mine now. You exhale. It is the gentlest parting you have ever experienced with a means of transportation. Academic debate. Some scholars argue the ritual of using a ship to speak with spirits wasn't about belief but memory. The boat became a floating library. People approached, asked questions through objects, and interpreted the response based on how the item behaved. So the Vikings may have used ships to talk to themselves via sacred tools. But the question remains, if it's all just collective hallucination, why do you feel like you've just been blessed with a look that doesn't exist? You continue. In your hand is the newly engraved runic symbol, still slightly warm, as if someone had just warmed it with a blessing. You think maybe tomorrow you won't remember this, or maybe you'll just remember it like, oh, I talked to a stick on a ghost ship. And that's fine. People have dreamed of talking pizzas and written books. So a Viking stick broadcasting memories, not so bad. You walk along the black sand, the soles of your feet sinking into the volcanic rock, as if you were treading on solidified time. The dim light from the north casts a cold blue streak across your steps. And ahead is a gray wooden bridge spanning a stream as thin as a silver thread. You don't hear the sound of water, but the bridge groans. Not the old worn-out kind, but the "I remember someone who passed here" kind of groan full of indescribable sadness. You stand before the bridge and suddenly understand this is not a bridge to cross a river. It is a bridge for souls to choose their path. Maybe. You're not entirely sure, but really, who builds a bridge in the middle of the night leading nowhere? You put your hand on the railing. The wood is cold as buried stone, but you feel a slight vibration, like something is analyzing you. You try to step. The bridge doesn't break. You take another step. A jackdaw flies overhead, cawing something like, "Don't do that, but whatever." You don't stop, because when a strange bridge calls to you in the night, you should really stay away. But you're not that wise, historical fact. In Norse mythology, some ancient bridges were considered places where the dead were tested. It was believed that the soul would reveal its true nature as it crossed the bridge. If you were a true warrior, you would cross as if walking flat ground. If you were a coward or a liar, the bridge would tremble. Or worse, you wouldn't see it at all. Just the cold, empty river. Meaning the bridge can judge energy too. You hope you're positive enough. In the middle of the bridge, there's a wooden post on which is a rusty metal circle. You look at it and it looks back at you. Not with your eyes, with your memories. You see a flash of an image, a Viking woman, axe in hand, standing in a field, her hair blowing like fire. She purses her lips, places her hand on the same bracelet, and vanishes into thin air. You look back at your hand. The rune stick starts to tinkle. You let it touch the metal. The bridge doesn't collapse, but a cold air rises from beneath your feet, creeping into the crevices between your toes. A symbol appears on the wooden floor, glowing softly like a lazy candle. If you continue, do not turn back. You continue. Not because you are brave, but because turning back now would be very uncool. Weird detail: Vikings sometimes put honey in cow skulls and hung them from bridges to entice hungry souls. No one's sure why, but one theory says if the ghost is still hungry, it's stuck on Earth. If the honey is still there by morning, this bridge is safe. If it's gone, maybe we take the long way. You roll your eyes. No cow skulls. Maybe today, ghosts are vegetarians. You cross the bridge halfway. It's very quiet, not the comfortable kind, the before something pops kind. A whirring sound. A small wooden arrow as thin as a chopstick sticks out in front of your foot. Not piercing, just reminding. You pick it up. There's a black ink mark on the shaft. The living may not pass if they forget their name. You whisper your name. No one acknowledges it, but the bridge stops ringing. You continue walking. Not because you're sure, but because it's too scary to back away. Academic debate. Some documents suggest soul-calling rituals weren't meant to check on the dead, but to purify the living. The living person would step onto a bridge face, a spiritual test shake off grief, torment, or hatred, and move on clean. The question is, if that's true, would the soul on the other side be disappointed? If you still held anger in your heart, you look up. The other end of the bridge is clearer now. There's a stone door, and beside it, a gray hand clenched in ash reaching toward the sky. You don't know if it's a greeting or a warning. You touch the stone door. It opens not with a cry, not with a push, just as if it's waited long enough for someone. You step in, and the bridge behind you disappears into the mist. It's just you, the stick, and a tunnel ahead, carved with symbols you've never seen before, and a distant voice singing softly like a lullaby, or a nightmare sleeping. You step through the stone door as if you're crossing a curtain between two worlds, a world where people still eat cold herring porridge with wooden spoons, and a world without herring, but with many strange things. The space inside is dark and cool, with the pungent smell of ancient moss and something like ash with whispers. The stone floor underfoot is smooth as if hundreds of years of memories have passed, eroded by time into smoothness. On the walls, runes, circles, fish, scales. Crooked sticks seem to be murmuring to each other. You step deeper into the ground, clutching the rune stick tightly, your fingers trembling slightly, but your heart is not sure whether it's curiosity or exhaustion. You arrive at a small semicircular room. In the center is a clay chair on which sits something. Calling it a person is a bit of an exaggeration. Calling it a statue is not quite enough. It is as tall as you, covered in dried mud with cracks like sun-baked skin, and holds a piece of wood in its hand, carved with strange characters. As you approach, it nods, then stops moving. You try to say hello. Hello. No one answers. But the rune stick in your hand makes a slight vibration like bamboo being struck together in the wind. You let the stick touch the piece of wood the clayman holds. A stream of images rushes into your head like a preview of an endless story. Historical fact. In Norse culture, runes are not just writing, but also sacred symbols used in rituals, divination, and magic. Some rune sticks or tablets are carved from ash wood, the tree believed to be the soul of the world Yggdrasil, the world tree. The ancients believed that when runes were properly inscribed into living material, they could retain the memories, words, and even emotions of the engraver. Not much different from leaving a voice memo, except there's no erase button. You hear a faint hissing sound like someone was whistling but forgot to blow. The clayman raises his head. One eye falls out, but no one seems surprised. Not even you. From the stick in his hand, a sound comes out. No words, no music, just a feeling. A Viking woman, her hair braided in hemp, holding a stick in her hand, stands in the middle of a snowy field talking to the dead. You don't understand the words, but you know the content. She asks her father, dead 2 winters ago, whether she should marry a man who carries 12 goats and can't bake bread. The answer, she laughs, turns on her heel, and walks away. The father did not answer, but the stick shook as she left. Perhaps it was the spirit's way of saying it's fine as long as you're not hungry. Odd detail, some Norse texts record old women using rune-carved sticks as recorders, sticking them into the graves of their loved ones and sitting by them all night waiting for answers. The sticks were then carefully stored away, only to be used again when asking important questions, for example, who to marry, when to sew, or when to forgive the youngest daughter who quarreled over a comb. Odd things, some sticks, after hundreds of years, still retain clear markings, even though they are made of soft wood. Wood has memory. You begin to believe it. You tiptoe closer to the clay man, and as if by reflex, he raises the piece of wood and places it in your hand. You look down. There are runes on it, you barely understand them. Write it down, don't tell it. A request, a command, or an old rule. You hold the piece of wood, bite your lip, and think, if I could write something down right now, what would it be? You think of your name, of the smell of moss tonight, of the sound of the old bridge, and how the silence here doesn't make you feel lonely, but heard. You carve a few lines lightly into the wood. Nothing magical happens until the clay man nods again. Academic debate. Some modern scholars believe that the rune sticks once used to speak to spirits weren't actually communicating with the dead, but rather the living talking to themselves through symbols. When carving the stick, people organize their thoughts, beliefs, anxieties, and when questioning the stick, they are simply reading themselves from the past. If so, then the whole talking to the ghost ritual is really just an ancient version of keeping a diary. You don't find this funny. The wood never interrupts. You put the piece of wood in your pocket, light as a damp feather, and bow to the clay man. He doesn't speak, but he tilts his head slightly as if to say, good, go on. The back door of the cave opens. A pale blue light floods in like night dew falling on a field after a snowstorm. You take a deep breath. It feels like you're taking a long drink of history. Then you move on, because the story isn't over yet. You step out of the cave, leaving the clay man behind like a dream with torn edges, and before you is a field of ice stretching to the horizon. But strangely, it's not cold. The ground is still frosty, the snow is still dappled, but the wind is like an ancient fox fur coat. In the distance, there is a row of round houses roofed with hay smoke, curling like sleeping snakes from compressed earth ventilation pipes. You know the kind of house, the longhouse, where 5 generations can sleep on a wooden bench and no one has a concept of personal space. You move toward the middle one. Inside, there is the rustle of weaving, the sound of a rooster tapping its hooves on the doorframe, and the smell of old turnip soup with a salty smoke. An old woman sits at her loom. Her hair is braided into 3 braids like the river of time. Her eyes are closed, but her hands are constantly moving. You say nothing. You know she is weaving something not meant for the naked eye. Historical fact. In Viking society, women played a large role in the family and in religion. They managed property, made decisions in the home, and some were called vulva, female shamans, prophets and intermediaries between the living and the dead. Vulva often used carved wooden staffs, wore cloaks with metal chains, and wore headdresses. They not only spoke to spirits, but also wove prophecies on looms, for weaving was a metaphor for weaving fates. The old woman invited you to sit down on the bearskin. You weren't sure if it was alive. Maybe it was just in a deep sleep. "What are you weaving?" you asked her. She didn't open her eyes, just smiled. "The future," she replied, "but it's a bit messy." You looked at the loom. What's woven isn't wool, but hair-like threads that glow blue in the dark. And every time the needle hits the frame, you hear a creaking sound, like the wind scratching at a door you forgot to lock. Weird details. Some ancient Icelandic records claim that vulva can reweave broken dreams, meaning that if you wake up from a broken dream, you can come to them. They'll reweave your dream using words and objects that have a mark, a comb, a button, a wooden spoon you used to use, and tell you the ending. In the worst cases, the ending might be you were stung by a magic wasp and turned into a buckthorn tree. But more often, it's cuter. The old woman stops, opens her eyes, and looks at you through her opaque pupils. You didn't come to ask about dreams, she says. You carry a piece of wood in your pocket that whispers. You flinch. It's the piece of wood from the clayman. "Give it to me," she says. You place the piece of wood in her hands. She rests it on her knees, closes her eyes, and nods slightly. "It's not full. You must continue." What you ask. The first time the Vikings called a spirit to ask whether they should plant oats or onions. The second time they asked whether they should marry the person who brought them salt. She pauses. The third is yours. You carve into the wood. Why do the living remember the dead? The question radiates a faint warmth as it touches the wood. Academic debate. Some modern scholars argue that the ritual of speaking to the spirit is not about getting advice, but rather a psychologically soothing ritual, like writing a letter to a deceased person. In a culture where loss and winter are ever present, keeping the word alive may be the only way to keep yourself from falling into a state of despair. That also explains why many of the runes don't carry prophecies, just little things. "My mother likes dried fish. It's not snowing today. I miss my father's snoring." You thank her. She hands you back the piece of wood now, with a tiny glint in the carving. You stand up and walk out of the longhouse. Night has fallen, the sky is frozen water covered with stars, and you hear a soft singing coming from a cliff. A lullaby, you think. Maybe for the dead, or for you. You're not sure, but you know you're going to keep going, because the story isn't over yet. You leave the flickering light and continue deeper into the snowfield, where all sound is absorbed like a cold sponge. Your heels sink into the soft snow, each step a breathless one. Suddenly, a small stick stuck between 2 rocks makes you stop. It is not there by chance. On the end of the stick hangs a string of whale teeth and dried snowflakes woven from brown-dyed hemp. Someone has placed it there, a sign, a staffer, a Viking symbol used to mark a safe passage through a winter labyrinth or to mark where the soul should stop. You look around. The wind begins to shift. The smell of burning wood and snowgrass fills the air. And then through the mist a dance appears. Historical fact, the Vikings were not all war and sea. They celebrated a great winter festival called Yule, which later became Yule, the basis of modern Christmas. During LOL, the Vikings held a feast that lasted for days. Roast pork, rye beer, honey cakes, and even dances around the fire, not just for the living, but also for their ancestors. They believed that on Yule night, the barrier between the two worlds was as thin as silk. The spirits of their ancestors could return to visit their descendants if invited with music, cakes, and greetings. You see the snow foxes dancing around the fire, really. They stand on 2 legs, their furs glistening as if covered in snow. One of them carries a curved horned wooden pipe, which makes a sound not like music, but like the wind sliding over old cacti, something odd but pleasant, like a harp falling into an ice cave. A fox approaches and hands you a birch branch inscribed with runes, soft curves like hasty handwriting, but full of meaning. You can't read it yet, but you feel it. Weird detail. Some modern scholars believe that the Vikings used wooden sticks engraved with runes not only for writing, but also for mental recording. Birch or ash were chosen for their vibrations like a wooden hard drive. If you whisper into a rune-engraved stick while your mind is in a state of deep meditation, the words will be imprinted in the wood ready to be read by someone else. This helps explain why some rune sticks are buried with the body or hung on the door of a house or burned on Yule as a way to send an email to a deceased grandparent. You can't speak fox, but one tilts its head gestures with its nose and points to a circular pillar of compressed snow. On it are countless small sticks like spirit mailboxes. You quietly place your stick in the narrow slot. As soon as you let go, the entire snow column glows softly, as if breathing moonlight. You're not dreaming. Or if you are, it's a very carefully programmed dream. Academic debate. There is a school of historians who argue that linking Viking spirit messaging rituals to shamanic traditions is a form of false modernization. They argue that most of the artifacts found, the staves, the symbols, the looms, are simply household or symbolic ritual objects, not necessarily representative of mystical practice. However, the opposing camp counters. We cannot separate myth from society because for Vikings, soup making and spirit calling were both things to do before dusk. The feast ends. The fox bows. The music melts into the snow like children's laughter in the wind. You turn back the way you came, but you are no longer cold. There is a light in your heart like an ancient code just written inside your spine. Maybe tomorrow you will forget, but tonight you remember, and you still have a way to go. You continue along the edge of a birch grove, the trunks striped white, as if someone had drawn them in charcoal, and suddenly you come upon a bridge. Not a stone bridge, not a rope bridge. This one is made of whale bones. Lined up white and smooth as ice, each vertebra arching gently over a frost-covered ravine. You hesitate to step onto it, but when you place your foot first, it makes a sound like a drum on snow. Vikings didn't build bridges like this, did they? Historical fact: Vikings weren't just warriors and farmers. They were skilled maritime engineers. They built wooden and stone arch bridges in parts of Norway, a feat that predated many European cities. Some of these bridges lasted more than 900 years before falling apart. But bridges in Viking culture were more than just physical. There was the oath bridge, where people placed their hands on their swords and swore not to break their promises. There was the ancestor bridge, a symbolic concept of the connection between the living and the dead, especially during winter night festivals. You are crossing such a bridge not for carriages but for promises. In the middle of the bridge you meet a person, or a silhouette. A woman wearing a white bearskin cloak, a hat made from a seagull skull, holding a bundle of dried reeds. She doesn't say a word, but she hands you a wooden stick carved into a tiny broom. This broom is not for sweeping the house, but for sweeping memories. You get the idea. This is a ritual, but not the kind you see on TV. She draws a circle around you with the broom. Then she steps back, nodding. So you continue, and suddenly you see the light. Quirky details. One of the little-known facts about the Vikings is that they believed light could be stolen. There are legends that goblins or winter spirits could steal the light of the sunset if you didn't trap it by planting wooden sticks in a row before the sunset. Some scholars think this is a symbol of fence posts, but some astute folklorists point out no one fenced the sun to keep it out unless you really believe that light was an object. Crossing the bridge, you come to an open space where a group of Vikings in ceremonial dress, charcoal-dyed leather jackets, fur hats, shell necklaces have gathered. They don't speak, they recite poetry, not love poetry. It's murmur poetry, a form of reading runes in circles like lullabies to the spirits of ancestors. You are invited into the circle. An older man, his beard tied with fish bones, places a round piece of wood in your hand, engraved with Islandingabok. The runes are swirling from the outside in, as if history is drawing you into its center. Academic debate. Some modern linguists believe that many Viking ancestral poems were not meant to be read, but to be transmitted through sound vibrations. According to this theory, poetry is not heard but felt. Reading it out loud is only the surface. The foundation lies in the ancient rhythm of the drum, the heel hitting the ground, and the hand gently patting the shoulder of the person next to you. Some scholars argue if you can't write it down or record it, it's not poetry, it's just a sound phenomenon. But the Vikings would probably say, if the wind knew your name, you would have left poetry. The ceremony ends without applause. There is only the smell of barley bread and melting snow. You leave the circle. The sun begins to rise behind the mountains, or is it the light from the soul torch? You are not sure. But you do know one thing: there is a language without words and a bridge without foundations. You have crossed both. Hey friends, tonight let's explore the strange snowy world of Viking communication again. The snow has a hush to it. You step lightly, boots crunching over layers that have settled like flour on the earth. It's quiet except for the breeze through trees, and that occasional creak like something old remembering how to sigh. In your gloved hand, a carved stick feathered at one end. You're delivering it to a particular stone, a stone that talks back. Before you relax, take a second to like and subscribe if you find value in what we share. And drop a comment with your location and local time. We're building a sleepy little global village here. Dim those lights, fire up a fan for that cozy background sound, and let's settle in for the journey ahead. There's a boulder just north of your village. It sits among pine roots and moss, rounded and pocked with tiny holes. Most people avoid it, but you've seen them Vikings who walk there silently and press a stick into one of those holes. Then sometimes they whisper something, and sometimes, just sometimes, the stone squeaks, or chirps, or groans. People call it Svarstein, the answering stone. They say it knows things, secrets. It can feel who you're missing or hear voices from the other side. You, of course, being you, were curious long before now. But today, you're finally allowed to go. Your uncle said so. He even carved your first spirit stick and handed it over with a half grin and a wink. He said, if the stone answers, don't run. Be polite. You're halfway there now, walking through snow heavy with the scent of pine. You try not to imagine what an ancient ghost voice might sound like. Wispy, loud, smug. You arrive. The boulder doesn't seem like much. You've passed by it before it looked like a fat troll fell asleep and turned to rock. Now it feels aware. Maybe. There are the holes about as wide as your finger, and carved into the base runes, old ones, worn. One of them kind of looks like a fish, another like a chicken. You crouch and press the feathered end of your stick into a hole. Nothing. You wait. Still nothing. You whisper, hello, still nothing. You sigh, start to pull the stick back out. Squeak! You fall backward. It sounded like a tiny door hinge being strangled. Then silence. You stare at the boulder. Squeak. You try again, poking a different hole. Grrrt. You jump again. That one sounded like a very small angry cow, or a frog with opinions. And then, from the woods, tiny skitters. You freeze. A little whiskered face pokes out from under the mossy side of the boulder. A vole. Then another. Then another. Their ears twitch. One sneezes. And it hits you. The stone doesn't talk. The stone is home. Home to a whole noisy family of forest rodents. The old holes in the stone. They don't go far. They lead into little hollows just under the surface where voles nest and hoard pine needles and probably have arguments about acorns. And when someone sticks a stick, and especially a stick with feathers, they react in their squeaky, creaky, sneezy way. That's it. The answering stone is just a mouse town with great acoustics. You walk home. You don't say anything. Not at first. Let the mystery sit. A few weeks pass. Then one day someone in the village says, I went to Svarstein. It squealed. Must have been the ghost of my great-grandfather warning me. You smile, you nod. You don't ruin it. Because sometimes the truth isn't better than the story. And sometimes the story is the truth, just in disguise. Besides, who's to say voles aren't guided by spirits, maybe ghosts like Whiskers? You keep the stick. Every now and then you polish it. Not for answers, but because it reminds you sometimes when people say something is magical, they mean it made them feel a little less alone, even if it's just a rock full of squeaky roommates. Hi all, tonight we'll discover what happens when you lose something very small that holds very large meaning. The wind is stronger today. It keeps pulling at your cloak like a nagging little cousin. The snow is deeper too, up to your knees in some places, sparkling with that sharp kind of brightness that makes you squint and sneeze. You're supposed to be heading to the village council hall, but you're not yet, because you lost a stick. A very important stick. And in your village, that's sort of like losing someone's favorite ancestor. Before you settle in, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the content here. And drop your location and current time in the comments. We love hearing where and when you're tuning in. Go ahead, lower the light switch on a gentle fan for some calming white noise, and let's begin our evening adventure. Here's what happened. 3 days ago, you were walking back from a small ceremony in the forest, one where you and a few others had brought carved sticks to place in the ground near the winter shrine. These were ghost sticks gifted during special moments to honor the dead. Yours had taken you 2 weeks to make. The wood came from a lightning-struck tree. It had tiny wave patterns in the grain. You carved it while humming old lullabies. You even tied a single raven feather at the top, bound with twine made from your grandmother's old cloak. And now gone, you don't even know where you lost it, somewhere between the edge of the forest and your home. And today of all days, the village elders asked to see it. Apparently, the winter solstice fog has arrived early this year. That's not great. Some say it means the veil is thin. Spirits are curious, restless. This is usually when people start whispering about who should perform the settling ritual. And naturally, someone mentions your name, not because you're particularly talented, but because you're due for a spiritual responsibility. That's counsel talk for you're young, healthy, and haven't been cursed in the last 3 months. You should have said no, but you didn't. And now they want the stick. Special one. The one you've lost. You retrace your steps. The forest feels different today, quieter somehow, like it's holding its breath. You search under snow-piled branches, behind boulders, along frozen creek beds. No sign of it. And then crunch, your boot slips, you fall on your side, snow pluming around you like startled ghosts. And when you sit up, you see it, half buried beneath a drift. The feather peeks out like a signal flag. You reach for it, heart pounding, when whoosh! A sudden gust of wind. Sharp, cold, fast. The stick is yanked from the snow and flies across the clearing like it's being dragged. You scramble to your feet. You chase it. It bounces, skitters, and finally gets caught in the crook of a low pine branch. You snatch it relieved and then freeze, because standing on the other side of the clearing is your mother, which would be comforting, except she's been gone for 5 years. She doesn't speak. She looks almost exactly the same as you remember, dark hair braided with holly berries, eyes gentle but serious, hands tucked into her fur-lined sleeves. She points upward. You follow her gaze. Clouds, snow-heavy, low, but something else of snow is falling. But only on one side of the clearing. Not just flakes of rush, like someone up there tipped a whole barrel of soft frost. You blink. Your mother is gone. You step forward trembling. The snow is falling in a spiral, like a gentle vortex. Just above the place where you'd nearly lost the stick again, it falls and falls and falls and then stops. A moment later, the village priest arrives, huffing. He's wearing ceremonial boots and a look of disbelief. What happened here, he asks. You glance at the stick in your hand. You don't know how to explain. Not really, so you just say I was about to lose it again. But she stopped it. Who, he asks. You swallow. My mother. The priest looks at the undisturbed snow, the swirl shape still faintly visible on the ground, and nods. Not like he understands, but like he accepts. I'll inform the council, he says. It seems the veil favors you after all. That night during the ritual, you hold the stick in both hands. The villagers gather around the shrine. Everyone's breath curls in the cold. The priest chants. You close your eyes and think of your mother, her warmth, her voice, her hands on your shoulders. Before exams, her laugh when you dropped a whole fish into her lap. The wind is still now, as if the mountain itself is listening. Later, someone carves a new rune on the shrine gate. It's not one they use often. It means protection found in loss. You keep the stick beside your sleeping mat now, just in case she ever wants to visit again. Hey guys, tonight we're going to explore one of the most underwhelming curses in Viking history. So underwhelming, in fact, it might just make you sneeze. The snow's gotten fluffier this week. It doesn't fall, it floats. You walk through it like wading through feathers, your cloak slowly icing over. There's a weird warmth under your arms and an annoying chill down your spine. That can only mean one thing: you're getting sick. But you also might be cursed, maybe both. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, pop your location and local time in the comments. We're all sharing this sleepy Viking saga together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've been sneezing all day. Not once, not twice, but 17 times by lunch. And every time you sneeze, something mildly weird happens. First sneeze, your cousin dropped a fish. Second sneeze, the firewood stack collapsed. Third, a squirrel threw a pine cone at your head. You swear it was on purpose. Your grandmother notices. She's 93, half blind, and entirely too observant. She waves you over and pokes at your forehead like she's testing a melon. Cursed, she says flatly. You blink. I think it's just a cold. No. Cursed. She pulls out an old stick from behind her chair, twisted like a pretzel with runes carved into the side in what appears to be burnt toast. This, she says, is the Achu stick. You stare. What? She nods solemnly. It carries the curse of Snifflehorn. You don't want to believe her. Naturally. But later that evening, your cousin trips into a snowdrift right after you sneeze again. Then the roof starts dripping only over your bed. Then the family goat escapes and only knocks over your food bowl. Grandma grins. See? You take the stick, wrap it in fur, and bury it under a rock by the river. That should do it, you think. It doesn't. You sneeze again at midnight. The snow shifts off the roof and lands directly on your boots, which had been drying near the door. You dig the stick back up. Now what you do? What any logical Viking would do, you take it to the local curse breaker. Her name is Elba. She smells like onions and wears a cloak made entirely of mismatched mittens. Her hut has exactly one chair, 3 cats, and a huge painting of a goose. You show her the stick. You sneeze. One of her cats falls off a shelf. She nods. That's a low-level nuisance curse. You'll be fine. But what is it? She shrugs. It's the ghost of seasonal allergies, probably. Somebody carved the stick during cold season while watching someone blow their nose near a sacred tree. Bad mix. Soft haunt. Soft haunt. Yes, the kind of ghost that doesn't want to hurt you, just wants you to put on a scarf and drink soup. You go home. You keep the stick in a basket surrounded by herbs next to the fire. Your sneezes slow down, then stop. You think maybe it's over, that it was just a fluke, until your little brother touches the stick and sneezes, and the goat immediately knocks over a lantern. You sigh. You write a tiny note and tie it to the stick. Do not touch unless you enjoy inconvenience. Then you wrap it in cloth and leave it at the village library labeled "The Kindly Curse" for study purposes only. Years later, a traveling scholar reads your note and laughs. He studies the runes and declares that the stick carries a rare enchantment of low-grade mischief, the kind favored by spirits who used to be pranksters in life, the kind of ghosts who blew out candles and then giggled from the walls. He adds it to his collection and stores it next to a haunted sock that sings lullabies out of tune, a spoon that stirs tea counterclockwise on full moons, and a potato that once made a whole army yawn. But for you, you still sneeze when you get nervous, or emotional, or near goats. You're not sure if it's the curse, or just you now. But every time it happens, you remember. Not all curses are cruel. Some are just clingy. Some just want to be remembered. Hello everyone, tonight we're going to peek inside the strangest Viking tradition of all, a weekly club where burly warriors sit in a circle, hold carved sticks, and try to talk to ghosts. Usually after 2 mugs of honey mead. The snow's packed down into glittering crust today. The sun barely rises, everything glows blue. You wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders. In your satchel is a stick, freshly polished, lightly scented with spruce sap, and covered in absolutely ridiculous etchings. You're on your way to the club. So before you relax, take a second to like and subscribe if you find value in what we share. Also, drop your city and local time in the comments. We're building a sleepy map of listeners, one yawn at a time. Turn down the lights, perhaps start a fan to create a soothing ambience, and join me as we slowly dive into tonight's story. They call themselves the Spirit Circle. It started supposedly when 3 men got lost in a blizzard, shared one blanket, and hallucinated the same ghost telling them to form a club. This was either destiny or hypothermia. Either way, every Thursday evening between sunset and slightly later sunset, they meet in the Longhouse Annex, also known as Bjorn's empty barn. There's a fire pit, some moldy benches, a rotating snack table, usually smoked fish or rock-hard bread, and one rule: bring a stick, a talking stick. Not literally talking, of course. That's just what they call it. Your stick should be carved with runes, ideally from a tree struck by something dramatic. Lightning rage, heartbreak a goat. You take turns holding it while sharing visions, hauntings, dreams, or that time you heard footsteps behind you, but it was just your own echo. You've been invited as a guest tonight. You are both flattered and concerned. Bjorn is the club's founder and lifelong chairman. He has a beard that could house a bird's nest and a voice that sounds like it was carved from a log. Tonight's meeting begins with ritual. Bjorn clears his throat like a thundercloud. We welcome all souls seen and unseen, especially those who died in suspicious fishing accidents or in arguments about soup recipes. Everyone hums for 6 seconds. It's supposed to attract ghost frequencies. Then he lights a candle with a match he swears was blessed by a monk who once met a ghost cousin. Then the stick is passed around. The first to speak is Torvi. She's a farmer with a spooky chicken coop and a permanent frown. She claims one of her hens lays eggs that whisper secrets. Last week's egg said, "Don't trust the cabbage." Everyone nods solemnly, especially Ingrid, who had stomach trouble after cabbage stew. Next is Egil. He's convinced his sled is haunted because it always goes left no matter what. He's tried sandbags, extra runners, even screaming at it. Nothing helps. Then it's your turn. You hold the stick, which feels warmer than it should. You clear your throat. I think my grandmother sent me a dream. She was sitting by the hearth knitting socks out of mist. She didn't say anything, just smiled and pointed at the window. I looked out and saw a fox in the snow. Bjorn leans forward. Was the fox glowing? You shrug. Kind of. Definitely a message, he says. From the sock realm. Torvi nods like this happens all the time. Then comes the debate. The second half of every meeting is when people argue over what ghosts mean. Egil says the fox is obviously a warning. Ingrid thinks it's a sign of good fortune. Torvi insists it's probably your grandmother saying you need new footwear. Bjorn says we must not divide the spirit's message. All meanings are valid, except cabbage. Cabbage is never trustworthy. Later, the meat is passed around. Someone plays a flute that may or may not be cursed. It only plays when no one's looking. The fire crackles. And as you lean back against a hay bale, you begin to wonder. Maybe the club isn't really about ghosts. Maybe it's about remembering. Remembering that others believe you. That strange dreams matter. That your story has a place, even if it's just between moldy benches and fish snacks. The night ends with a chant. We are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone. Everyone says it in a different key. It sounds horrible, but also kind of beautiful. You walk home under stars that feel a little closer. From then on, every Thursday you bring your stick. You share what you've heard or dreamed or imagined. Sometimes there's a silence in the room so perfect you're sure something invisible is listening too. Not all ghosts want to scare you. Some just want to be invited. Well, not actual legs, but you'll see. It's the kind of tale that makes you look twice at something motionless, then wonder if it moved while you weren't looking. The kind that makes even a simple twig feel like it might be following you home. Before you settle in, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the content here. And let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Dim those lights, fire up a fan for that cozy background sound, and let's settle in for the journey ahead. It starts with a noise. You're outside the longhouse after dusk checking on the drying fish when you hear a faint skirt, like something sliding over frost. Not loud, not threatening, just persistent. You glance down. They're not far from your foot is a carved stick. You've seen it before. It belonged to Jarl Eirik Tallman, broad laugh, very dead. He carved it from driftwood during a storm, swearing it had whale energy. No one questioned it. It was placed on his funeral pyre last month, which is why it should not be on your doorstep now. You blink. The stick twitches. No wind, no slope, no goose nearby to blame. You step closer. It jerks forward again, an awkward scoot like an inchworm made of wood. You freeze. It freezes. You both seem to be pretending you didn't just see each other move. You bring it inside, not out of bravery, out of confused politeness. You put it on the table. It doesn't move. You make tea. Still doesn't move. You turn away to get honey, and when you turn back, it's 3 inches to the left. You sleep with one eye open. Nothing else happens. In the morning, the stick is still on the table, exactly where it shouldn't be, pointing toward the door. You pick it up and whisper, "What do you want?" "Nothing." So you tuck it into your belt and walk out. Where? You're not sure. But with every step, the stick seems to tug, slightly urging you in a direction. Left at the fork in the trail. Up when you hesitate near the ridge. Through when you reach a snowed-in path you weren't planning to take. 3 hours later, your boots crunch through ice-crusted snow until you reach a small hilltop overlooking the fjord. It's quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that usually means something important or weird is about to happen. You stop walking. The stick twitches in your hand, then goes still. You look around. There's nothing here but wind rocks and a low cairn built from black river stone. You kneel. You brush away frost. There's an old sigil carved into the top of the cairn. It's faint, worn by decades of storms. But you know it. It's the mark of Eric's first son, lost at sea as a boy never found. You hadn't known about the cairn. No one had spoken of it in years. But apparently the stick knew. You place it carefully beside the stones. And it stays. No twitch, no scoot, no dramatic glow. Just stillness. Back home you tell no one. But a week later you pass the cairn again during a hunting trip. The stick is still there. And next to it, another stick. A newer one. Carved with a different pattern. Placed gently beside the first. A third appears by winter's end. Somehow others have begun to follow it here. Quietly, without asking questions. Soon it's a small grove of memory. Silent sticks in the snow facing the fjord. Each one marking someone loved, someone lost, someone remembered by wood and wind. The village elders eventually notice. They don't interfere, just nod once in a while as if they too understand that not everything needs explanation. Some people say the sticks guide themselves there. Others say they're carried by ravens or ghosts or guilt. You say nothing. But sometimes late at night when your own dreams carry whispers of the sea and of people long gone, you place your hand on the windowsill and listen. For the soft drag of wood over snow, just in case something else is coming home. It's a cold day, the kind of cold that makes your eyebrows freeze slightly when you blink too slow. You're helping clean out the village attic where they keep old sleds, extra firewood, and apparently a terrifying mask that nobody remembers carving. It's the kind of job you get assigned when you have too much energy, which is village speak for "we need you out of the way." That's when you find it. So before we start unsealing ancient wooden mysteries, go ahead and like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the stories we share. Drop your time and location in the comments too. We love seeing the sleepy map light up. Now dim the lights, grab a blanket, and let's dig into tonight's story together. It's at the bottom of a woven basket, under some wool, tucked between two broken ladles, a stick, but not just any stick. It's longer than your forearm. Dark wood, smooth, carefully carved with ridges that spiral down like the grooves of a shell. You lift it expecting weight, but it's oddly light, and when you tip it, something shifts inside. You shake it gently. Clink. There's something in there. You hold the stick up to your ear. It hums. Not with sound, but with memory. You feel it, like heat from a stone that's been sitting in the sun all afternoon. You take it outside. You break no rules, because there are no rules about this kind of thing. You sit by the hearth. You angle it toward the firelight, and that's when you see it. At the very top of the stick, under the carved ridges, there's a tiny seam, a lid, barely noticeable. You twist. It opens. Inside, a single silver hair and a curled slip of vellum no larger than your thumb. You hold your breath and unroll it. Only 4 words, Tano Chow Lam. I miss you so much. Your hands tremble. You recognize the handwriting. It belonged to your grandfather. He died before you turned 10. You remember his laugh, deep and warm. You remember the way he whittled pieces of driftwood into seabirds. You remember his smell, cedar and pepper and old snow. You had no idea he'd made this. No one in the family ever mentioned it. You show the note to your aunt. She stares at it. Her mouth softens. She says that was his ghost stick. What he made one when your grandmother passed. Said he couldn't let her go, so he carved a stick that was hollow, a place for messages. He used to whisper into it. Then he sealed it. Said it wasn't time yet to open it again. She blinks quickly. I guess now it is. That night you leave the stick on the windowsill beside your bed. Outside the wind howls. Inside the stick stays still. But you swear you feel it a presence. Not spooky, not cold, just watching. With love, you whisper, I miss you too. The next morning the note is still there. But the silver hair gone, replaced with a tiny white feather. You don't tell anyone. You just nod once like you've understood something ancient in secret. And that day you carve your own hollow stick. You write a note too. You don't know who it's for yet. But someday someone will find it. And maybe they'll feel a warmth in their chest, like someone far away has just said, I see you. I remember. Because sometimes the hollows in our lives aren't empty. They're waiting. It involves a frozen lake, a final farewell, and a forest full of silence so deep it listens back. It's called the echoing goodbye, a ritual that happens only once a year, and only when the lake is frozen thick enough to carry both weight and memory. Before we walk into this hush together, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these sleepy stories. And share your time zone and current weather in the comments. We're traveling the north together. Turn down the lights, perhaps start a fan to create a soothing ambiance, and join me as we slowly dive into tonight's story. The lake is called Vonheim Hollow. It lies deep in the forest, ringed with old pines and whispered legends. It's not the biggest lake, not the deepest, but something about it feels aware. They say the ice holds voices. Every winter, as the snow settles and the winds quiet, the village walks there together just once on a moonlit night near the end of frost season. This is when the spirits are closest, when breath curls like ribbon in the dark and hearts feel more open than usual. Each person brings a stick. Not just any stick, a farewell stick. You're nervous. This is your first time participating. You've always watched from a distance, huddled beside the fire, too young or too scared to join. But this year something changed. Your older cousin passed. He was only 24. He used to hum while baking. He carved little bears from tree bark and hid them in your shoes. He was the one who taught you how to roast mushrooms without burning them. He's gone now, and your stick is for him. You arrive late. The others are already there, dozens of villagers standing quietly at the edge of the frozen lake. No one speaks. Some have candles, some carry small lanterns. No torches tonight, only soft light. Someone touches your arm and nods, it's time. One by one, people step onto the ice. The surface glows faintly under the moon. It holds your weight, but groans softly beneath your boots, as if it too feels the strain of goodbyes. At the center of the lake is a carved circle in the ice, rimmed with polished stones. The echo pool. You approach. You kneel. You place the stick beside the pool. It's painted blue at the tip, your cousin's favorite color. The feather tied around it comes from the first bird you ever fed together. You whisper something, not a speech, just a few syllables that feel right. I hope you're baking for someone somewhere. You place the stick gently into the hollow, and then you wait. The echo begins softly. It crack. Then a tone thin, high ringing like glass tapped underwater. Then silence again. Then somehow his hum. For a heartbeat, the sound vibrates up from the ice. Familiar. Fragile. Fading. Your breath catches. You're not the only one who hears it. People around the lake shift slightly, some close their eyes. One person whispers, yes. And then slowly the sound drifts away. When the last stick has been placed, the villagers form a circle around the lake. No one speaks. But a flute begins a slow aching melody made of only 4 notes repeated over and over. This is how the dead are walked across the veil, not with sorrow, but with presence, with intention. The next day the sticks are gone. The ice holds no sign of them, no cracks, no feathers, just glassy snow and sun. Some say spirits come and carry them away. Others say the lake absorbs them, turning memory into echo, into hush. You don't need to know. You felt it. That was enough. Back in the village, you carve another stick. This one is not a farewell. It's just a hello, a way of saying I'm still listening. Because in your heart, the ice still sings. Hey guys, tonight we're going on a journey not just through snow and shadow, but straight to the stars. Or at least to the top of a hill where one Viking claimed his stick could hear the moon. Yes, you heard that right. So before you relax, take a second to like and subscribe if you find value in what we share here under the twilight. And pop your location and current time into the comments. We're mapping our cozy constellation of listeners one dot at a time. Now dim those lights, fire up a fan for that cozy background sound, and let's settle in for the journey ahead. His name was Halvor Starrier. No, really. No one knew if Starrier was a name he gave himself or something that got whispered into a mead-fueled legend, but it stuck. He was tall, thin, often covered in soot from mysterious experiments, and always talking about vibrations from the firmament. Some said he once licked a frozen weather vane and gained cosmic insight. Others believed he was just very allergic to bees and got punched by a dream. Either way, he claimed his stick could receive messages from the moon. You first hear about Halvor's moonstick on a particularly windy night. You're huddled by the hearth while Aunt Sina roasts root vegetables and tells stories with a twinkle in her eye and an elbow in the potato basket. "You know the hill behind the old goat barn?" she asks. You nod. Well, Halvor used to climb it every night, holding a stick wrapped in silver wire, muttering, "I'm ready, Lady Moon. Transmit your wisdom." Then he'd stand there until frost formed on his eyebrows. You ask what he heard. She shrugs, mostly static, but once a hum. You blink. Like, a tune? No. More like when your cousin tries to play the lyre after drinking vinegar. Naturally, you go look. It's a clear night. The moon is sharp and low, casting light like spilled milk across the snow. You hike up the hill, bundled in your thickest cloak. The wind smells like pine and the distant memory of burned cabbage. At the top you find it, a little circle of stones, and in the middle, a stick, still there, half buried in frost. It's strange, it shouldn't have lasted this long. The wind up here is vicious. Things blow away, freeze, crack. But this, it's untouched. You brush off the frost. The stick is pale ash wood wrapped near the top in what looks like melted pewter. No moonstone chips, they sparkle faintly in the dark. Carved along the length are symbols, not runes, not anything you recognize. They almost look like musical notes or waves. You pick it up. It hums, not loudly, not clearly, but you feel it. A vibration through your palm. A low tone like the sound of the sea inside a shell. You sit, you listen. It continues steady calm as if something very old is sighing from very far away. And then, words, maybe it's impossible to tell. Like someone whispering through cloth. Familiar but foreign. Comforting but just out of reach. You whisper, "Are you the moon?" There's no answer. Of course not. That would be silly. But the hum deepens. You bring the stick back to the village. Bad idea, because suddenly everyone has an opinion. Egil says it's a trick made by bored ghosts. Torvi insists it's reacting to your body temperature. Ingrid swears it only works because of your ear shape. Bjorn the Elder says that stick talks to whoever listens right, which might be the wisest thing he's ever said between bites of pickled turnip. That night you sleep with it beside your bed, and you dream you're standing on the same hill. But it's not covered in snow. It's made of stars. The moon is larger than it should be, hovering above you like a watchful eye. The stick glows faintly, and in your dream you hear laughter. Familiar. Warm. You wake up with tears on your cheek and a quiet sense that something has seen you. Not judged you, not measured you, just noticed. And said, "Yes, you're here." Over time, the hum fades. The stick quiets. But sometimes when the moon is full and the night is still, you take it out again. And if you sit long enough, you swear it still remembers your voice and the stars. Maybe they're not so far away after all. Hey friends, tonight let's talk about children carved sticks and bedtime instructions from Grandma Ghosts. Yes, this is the story of how a generation of Viking children convinced an entire village that bedtime orders from the afterlife were very real and somehow very effective. So before we dig into crayons, chaos, and possible spirit bribery, don't forget to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I share here by firelight. Drop your time zone and what snack you're currently munching in the comments. Sharing makes everything cozier. Dim those lights, fire up a fan for that cozy background hum, and let's settle in for the journey ahead. You're not entirely sure when it started. One day the village kids were their usual wild selves, running around with bits of string and slapping each other with fishtails. The next they were carrying around spirit sticks, little ones, Made from firewood scraps, broom handles, soup ladles, anything vaguely stick-shaped. Each one was decorated differently. Some had feathers, some had ribbon. One had dried sardines tied to it. Nobody sat next to that one. And on each drawings, crayon runes, scribbled spirals, childlike hieroglyphics of goats and bread and frowning faces. When asked, the children solemnly replied, "These are from Grandma, not living Grandma, ghost Grandma. You overhear your nephew explaining it to another kid. See, I draw this goat and this face, and then the ghost of my grandma reads it and tells me to go to bed. If I don't go to bed, she'll tickle my toes in my sleep." The other child gasps. "Mine said if I eat too much dried fish, my dreams will smell like socks." The conversation continues with deep sincerity. These are not jokes. These are rules enforced by the undead. What's weird, though, is that it works. The children start sleeping on time. They start brushing their teeth with pine sap, but still. They even eat their greens without complaint because Grandma Ghost said my farts would summon a swamp spirit. Parents are confused, but grateful. The village priest is baffled. He holds up one stick painted green with a googly eye stuck to the top and says, "I have no theological explanation for this, but I approve." You decide to investigate. You borrow one of the sticks with permission and a small offering of honey bread. You study the drawings, you turn the stick over in your hand, you even whisper to it. Nothing happens, but that night you dream of your own grandmother. She's standing at the foot of your bed knitting something that looks suspiciously like socks for a goose. She smiles and says, "Don't forget to soak your feet before bed. You always sleep better." You wake up oddly rested, and your socks are mysteriously warm. Soon the children organize themselves into what they call the Ghost Council. They meet under a pine tree once a week. They vote on messages. They assign drawing duties. They share ghost gossip. Mine says the afterlife has soup fountains. Mine said ghosts are scared of bees. A new stick appears each week with new bedtime warnings. Some favorites: sleep now or your toys will unionize. Eat carrots or your dreams will turn gray. Floss or Grandma Ghost will rearrange your socks. On them, they become legends. By spring, the adults stop questioning it. The village simply accepts that the kids have tapped into a ghostly parenting hotline. Bjorn the Elder carves a special shelf in the library for the best sticks, cultural artifacts he calls them. And once a year, the children hold a spirit stick parade. They wear pillowcases as robes. They chant things like "brush, brush, lest ye be hushed." They throw dried apple slices into the crowd. It is both adorable and deeply unsettling. You keep one stick for yourself, not because you believe, but because some nights when your thoughts won't settle and the fire crackles just right, you hold it in your lap and whisper, "What now, Grandma?" And if you listen long enough, you swear the air smells faintly of her tea, and the blanket around your shoulders tightens just a bit. Hey friends, tonight, let's look up way up at the largest wooden structure you've never heard of. A Viking monument made entirely of sticks. Yes, sticks, 108 of them to be exact. It's called the Great Totem of Whispers by some. Others call it the Big Bundle of Kindling. Either way, it looms over the forest like someone tried to build a tree out of other trees and maybe got haunted along the way. So before you wander beneath this towering, creaky monument, please like the video and subscribe if you find value in what we build here. And share your local time and where you're listening from. We're piecing this cozy map of sleepy dreamers together, one comment at a time. Dim those lights, wrap up in a warm blanket, and let's climb into tonight's story. You first see it during a snowstorm. Not a fierce one. The kind of storm where the snow falls slow, soft, silent. The world turns white and then whiter. And through the trees, you spot something strange: vertical lines. A forest, no too regular, too symmetrical. You step closer, and there it is. A tower built from sticks. Dozens, no hundreds. Some carved, some smooth. All tied together, stacked upward in crisscross patterns. Like scaffolding for a sky that never got finished. It rises twice the height of the tallest pine. Its top disappears into the mist. It creaks slightly in the wind like it's thinking. Locals say it was built a long time ago, which in Viking terms could mean 3 decades or 12 centuries. No one really remembers. The legend says it began with one stick, a farewell stick. A man lost his brother during a storm at sea. No body, no closure. So he carved a message and left the stick upright in a clearing. A month later, a second stick appeared beside it, then a third. Some left theirs in mourning, others in hope. One woman claimed hers whispered back. Eventually, someone began stacking them. Not randomly, but deliberately, a sacred chaos. You visit it again the next morning. The snow has melted just enough to reveal the base. It's wide, circular, etched with names, hundreds of them. Scratch burned or inked in berry juice. You spot one, your great aunt. She died before you were born, but your family still talks about her cinnamon bread and sharp tongue. Her name is next to a stick wrapped in green twine. You reach for it. It's warm. Someone walks up behind you. An old man hunched, bundled in so many layers, he looks like a coat rack with opinions. He says nothing at first, just stands beside you looking up. Then he mutters, used to be shorter. I think the sticks grow. You glance at him. Grow. He nods like this is completely reasonable. Saw one stretch an inch once, full moon, summer solstice. Gave me a nosebleed. You don't ask follow-ups. He tells you people still come. Quietly, often alone, usually at dusk. They don't make announcements. They just walk into the clearing, stand at the base, and add their stick. There's no ritual, no speech, just intention. Each stick has its story, even if it never gets told aloud. One has feathers from a bird that never flew. One has teeth marks. One has a spoon tied to it. One smells like honey. You climb it, just a little. You shouldn't probably. It creaks under your weight, but something compels you. Halfway up, you stop. The wind sounds different here, not louder, but layered. Like echoes, like old words being reheard in the wrong order. You close your eyes. You hear always, still here, turnip, forgiven. A laugh, a sigh, a bark, then silence. You descend slowly. The monument doesn't move, but it feels like it's breathing. You leave your stick the next day. It's plain, smooth, no feathers, no carvings. But you wrap it in a thread from your grandmother's cloak. And as you press it into the base, you whisper, "Thank you for remembering what I didn't know I needed to say." It doesn't reply. But something shifts in your chest. Like a weight you forgot you were carrying just lifts. The tower remains. It will outlast you, and maybe that's the point. Because some stories aren't told, they're stacked, and some griefs aren't solved. They're shared, one stick at a time. Hey friends, tonight we arrive at the edge of something quieter. This story is about you, a single stick, and the message you carve when no one else is around. It's not about ghosts anymore, not really. It's about connection, about what's left unsaid, and what you dare to say anyway. So before we begin, please like the video and subscribe if you truly feel part of this gentle little corner we're making. And as always, share your time and where you're listening from in the comments. You never know who else is whispering goodnight at the same moment you are. Now dim the lights, find the stillness, and let's walk into tonight's story together. It starts when you realize there are no more messages, no signs, no dreams. The wind is just wind again. The lake doesn't hum. The sticks don't shuffle in the night. Even Bjorn, who once claimed the turnip crop had a ghost problem, is quiet. The world has gone still. It should feel peaceful, but instead it feels hollow, like someone shut the door behind you. You sit on your porch for hours that week watching the snow fall sideways. You try humming the tunes your grandmother used to sing. You whisper to the old spirit stick you once kept by your bed. Nothing answers. You tell yourself maybe it's over. Maybe the veil is closed. Maybe the spirits have moved on. Maybe you're supposed to too. And yet that evening, you take out a knife and a stick. You don't plan anything fancy. You choose a branch from the old ash tree behind your house. The one that creaks like it remembers your secrets. The bark peels easily. The wood is smooth, cool light. You begin to carve. At first it's just lines, dots, swirls that look more like daydreams than runes. But then the tip of your blade slows, and you start writing. Words, small ones, names, your cousin, your friend who moved away, the old man who gave you pickled fish every winter, the goat that used to follow you like a shadow. You keep carving. You don't cry. You don't stop. You just remember. The last thing you carve is not a word. It's a shape, a spiral, looping inward like the path to the center of something unsayable. You sit back. You run your fingers along the surface. It's imperfect. And exactly right. You walk out of the village without telling anyone, through the forest, past the broken fence, along the edge of the river where the stones know your name. You carry your stick wrapped in cloth. not because it needs to be hidden, but because it deserves to be held. You reach the hilltop, the same one where the moonstick once hummed, the same one where you first saw a fox in a dream. The wind is stronger here. It doesn't push, it welcomes. You press the stick into the snow. It stands, wobbles slightly, then settles. You wait. Not for a sound, not for a vision, just for the moment to be real. And when it is, you say softly, "I heard you. I remember you. I am still here." Nothing echoes. But in your chest, something replies. Not with words, with warmth, like a hand on your shoulder, like breath on cold skin, like silence leaning closer. When you return home, you don't feel alone. You don't feel haunted. You feel connected to what you don't know. And maybe that's okay, because not every message has to be received. Some only need to be sent. Hey friends, tonight we come to the final part of our journey. No wild curses, no glowing visions, just snow, silence and sticks, asleep beneath the ice. This is the end of the season, the end of a story, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of stillness. So before we enter this quiet chapter, take a second to like and subscribe only if you found warmth in what we've shared along the way. And let us know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what did these stories whisper to you? Now dim the lights, feel the hush settle around you, and let's ease into tonight's story together. The snow doesn't fall anymore. It just rests. It lies like soft memory across the rooftops, across branches, across the fields, where children once ran with spirit sticks trailing behind them like kite strings. The world holds its breath, and beneath all that white the sticks sleep. You walk to the lake again. No ritual this time, no counsel, no songs. Just you and the faint sound of your boots pressing into powder. The lake has frozen thicker than ever. Its surface is smooth and blue like glass, remembering how to be ocean. You step out carefully. The air is so still, your breath feels loud. At the center, you kneel, you touch the ice, and there faintly below the surface you see them. The sticks, thousands of them, layered like pages in a forgotten book. Some pale, some dark, some twisted with time, some so small you wonder if they were meant for tiny fingers. None of them move, and yet you feel heard. You press your palm flat. Close your eyes and you speak nothing, because you don't need to. This isn't about asking or calling or wishing. This is about listening. And the lake, it listens back, not with sound, with presence, with patience, with something that feels like you've done enough. You lie down on the ice just for a moment, just to feel what they feel. The cold, the weight, the quiet. The world doesn't ask you to be anything here. It just lets you be still. You don't cry, you don't dream. You just breathe. And that tonight is everything. When you rise, the wind has picked up barely. It curls through the trees like a lullaby. You turn to leave. And as you do, you hear it. Not a word, not a voice, but a whisper nonetheless. A hush that says, "Sleep now. We've got this." And for the first time in a long time, you believe it. Back home, you wrap yourself in fur. You sip warm broth. You look out the window at the snow. No ghosts, no spirits, no signs, just peace. And that's more than enough. So now, with your stick tucked away beside the hearth and the snow gently pressing against the window, you finally settle beneath your blanket. The fire has dimmed to soft coals. The night wraps around you like wool. No spirits come tonight. No messages, no dreams that demand decoding. Just the memory of carved wood, of snowflakes landing silently on old stones, and of voices your own and others sent out into the dark like tiny lanterns. You think of the sticks, the funny ones, the sad ones, the ones that glowed, the ones that just sat there quietly being remembered. You think of the hill, the lake, the moon. You think of the silence, and how somehow that silence answered. You're not sure when your eyes begin to close. It doesn't matter, because you are safe and still and heard. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace.